In this video, we are going to make REST APIs with .NET 9. Let's talk about the tools needed for this tutorial. First thing we need is .NET 9 SDK. However, if you already have installed Visual Studio, it means you already have installed it. Then you do not need to install the .NET 9 SDK. You can download it from here, .NET SDK, and go to the official site of Microsoft. You need to download this SDK. Right now .NET 9 is the latest one. So if you're watching from the distant future, means .NET 10 is released, then you need to download that one. Always install the latest one. So once you have installed .NET SDK, or maybe you already have installed Visual Studio, then you do not need to install it. Then you can check it out from here. Just type here .NET version and you can see mine is 9.0.300. Next thing we need is an IDE, VS Code. So you can also download it from here. Just type download Visual Studio Code and it will land you here in code.visualstudio.com, and you can download it from this website. So you need to choose an installer according to your operating system. The reason I am using Visual Studio Code so that everyone can follow this tutorial irrespective of the operating system. So if you are using a Mac, then Visual Studio won't be available there. Or if you are using Linux, then Visual Studio won't be available there. But VS Code is available everywhere. Now we need to install Docker Desktop, which you can also find here. And you can go to this site and go here in the, so here we have this download button and you can download it according to your operating system. But here is a catch. If you already have installed Postgres in your local machine, then you do not need to install the Docker Desktop, or you can also install the Postgres directly in your machine. But I'm going to use Docker Desktop in this video because Postgres is not installed in my machine. Now next thing, we need a GUI app where we can see our database or tables. So however, it is not a mandatory, but it is nice to have. So I already have installed pgadmin 4, which you can get it here. So you can install it from here. Right now it is showing for Windows. You can install it according to your operating system. However, it is not mandatory to install this thing. You can also use other tools like dbwork. It also have a community edition, or you can also install some VS Code extensions which are free to use, and you can use those tools as your GUI app where you can see your tables or you can run some queries on your tables. Now we need to create a new project. I'm going to create it from the terminal. So first of all, I'm going to visit the directory cd desktop. Okay, here I'm going to create a new solution file. So just type here .NET new sln and o, it means a folder name where we are going to install it, and just name it .NET pg demo, and it has created a solution file. So now we can visit to this directory cd .NET, and if you press tab it will autocomplete. So I just type here press tab and it has auto completed it. Now we are inside this directory. You can see we have a solution file inside this directory. Now we are going to create a new API project here. So just type here .NET new web API. use controllers. It means we are going to use a controller type APIs. If you do not use this flag, then it will automatically create these projects as a minimal API project, and I don't want that kind of project, so I'm going to use this flag use controller. Now here just type -o and name of the folder where this project will be created. So just name it .NET pgdemo.api. I guess it is controllers. Okay, that's fine. Now our project has been created. You can check it. So we have .NET pgdemo.api folder. Now what we need to do, we have to register our project in the SLN or solution. So we can type here .NET SLN add, and if I type here .NET pgdemo.api slash .NET pgdemo.api.cs proj, and if I type enter, then you can see this project is added to the solution. So now I want to do one more thing. I am going to create a gitignore file here and also going to initialize the git repository. So just type here .NET new gitignore, and you can see we must have a new gitignore file. Let's see, lslash. Here we have our gitignore file. Okay, now let's initialize the git repository. So git init, we have initialize the empty repository, git add git commit, let's just name it first commit. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to open this repository in the VS Code. So just type here code dot means current directory. So it is going to open the current directory in the VS Code. So it will take a little while since it is loading our projects. Now open the extensions and type here C# dev kit, and you need to install this extension. This extension is not an open source, but it is free for personal use and is a free for individual developers. It has a similar license like Visual Studio. Now you will be noticing that we have this tab here named Solution Explorer, and here we have our project. So we have lots of stuff here. Let's look at this briefly. So first thing here, we have this program.cs file, and it is the core of our application. So when our application runs, this file is executed first, then here it is creating our web application, then here we are registering our services, and in this section all the middlewares are defined. So middleware is a piece of code that runs in the HTTP pipeline. So when an HTTP request is made, these middlewares are going to run in a sequence. Now let's look at this file, which is called appsettings.json, and here we define our settings like connection strings and any settings like JWT related settings. So we define it here. And why do we define it here? Because you can change these things even after building the project. So let's say if you want to change the connection string, if you make that change in your application, then you need to rebuild that application, then redeploy it. But you can directly change it from here without relying on the building and redeploying the application. Now here we have this HTTP file. This is basically for running our APIs or testing our APIs. And here we have our controllers where we define our logic, and this weather forecast class is not that necessary to describe. And here we have this properties folder. Inside it we have the launch settings. Inside the launch setting you can see that we have profiles. So here is our HTTP profile, and look at this application URL. So when we run our application will listen at this HTTP port, and here we have this HTTPS profile. So if we run our application, this HTTPS port is going to be used. All right, so here we have our controllers, which is little bit of boilerplate, and here our APIs are defined. So it is our API controller because we have defined this attribute here, API controller. Now we have this route, and this route says the path of this API is just like, let's say our API is listening at localhost 500, then path of this endpoint will be just a name of controller, which is weather forecast. Okay, so let's run this application. .NET run. You can run it from here, or I already have opened the terminal, so I can also run it from here. So if I type here .NET run, then I'm going to get error because couldn't find a project to run. So ensure project exists here, but our project does not exist here. So we need to visit a location where our csproj file is located. So just type here .NET pgdemo.api, press enter. If we look at this directory, you can see we have this where is it, this file, .NET API csproj file. And you might be wondering where is our csproj file. So it is just here. If you double click on this, that file will be opened, and inside this file you can see we have defined our target framework, which is .NET 9, nullable enable, implicit usings enable, and we have this package pre-installed named open APIs. It is just for documenting our APIs. Okay, so right now if we type here .NET run, now you can see our application is running perfectly, and it is now listening on this port. So we just need to copy this thing, and if we go here in the browser, we can type weather forecast, and you might be wondering what this weather forecast is. I have said that it is the route of our controller or our endpoint. So here we have defined route, which is saying controller, it means just name of controller. So first we will append the main domain of our application, which is this one. Okay, and then name of our controller, which is weather forecast. Now we can listen, or we can get this endpoint in this location. So here we just only have one endpoint, which is get endpoint, and if we enter here, then you can see we have this data coming, and we have hit this API. Okay, but you also have noticed that we have this file here. So this file is basically for testing your APIs, but it won't work until you have installed an extension which is called REST client. This one, you need to install this package to work with .http file. If you are using Visual Studio, then you do not need to install any extension. This thing works out of the box in Visual Studio. So here you can see our application domain, and here is our endpoint. So if we click on this, you can see we have this data. And you can see here we have more information like the status code 200 OK, and here nothing more important, and here is our body where we are getting the array. Now we need to create our own controller, but before that make sure that we have installed the Postgres, and I'm not going to install the Postgres. I'm just going to use the Docker desktop, and you also have to use that if you haven't already installed the Postgres. It is the easiest way to get started with Postgres. Now here let's type docker postgres, and here in the hub.docker.com you will find the image of Postgres, and here in the right side you will notice that we have this command docker pull postgres 16.9 bullseye. Just copy this guy and go to the terminal. Let's stop this project for now, we do not need it now. Make sure you have installed the Docker first, and then you have to check if it is installed or not. So here we have Docker version. When you install the Docker, make sure you have opened it, otherwise it is not going to run. Okay, now let's run that command docker pull postgres, and here its tag is 16.9 bullseye. If you press enter, then it is going to pull this image from the Docker hub, but I already have this image, so I'm not going to download it again. Here we have the same image I have installed or pulled recently, means a few hours ago, so I'm not going to pull it again. You can also check it here, Docker images, and here this one Postgres and its tag. Now how to make container out of this image? So here you can go how to use this image. So we have multiple ways to use this, using the command or via PSQL or via Docker Compose. So we are going to use this simple approach. So you just need to copy that line and paste it here. So the command is docker run name and name of the container which you are going to, whatever name you want to use, and here e environment variable where we are defining the Postgres password, and d means detached mode, and it is the name of our image. So I'm not going to use this one because I need some more options, so I already have written it here. Don't worry, I will give you this command in the description. So it is similar, but we have few more options. The first thing, docker run, okay, and dash name means it is the name of our container. So I have named it pgdeb. Then e means our environment variable, which is Postgres password, and our password is p@5500rd, and then slash means I'm going to enter in the next line. So if you are using PowerShell, Windows PowerShell like this, then this command is not going to work as expected because this backward slash does not work here. So instead of backward slash, you have to write this thing, single quote. So it is single quote or backtick. So I'm not remembering. It may be either the single quote or backtick. It is either one of them. But yeah, you can use bash like me, which is pre-installed in the Windows when you install the Git. So yeah, you are a developer, you must have installed Git. If you have installed Git, then you must have the GitBash, which you can find it from here, or you can also find it from here, GitBash, and you can open it from here. Okay, one more thing, this terminal is called terminal app, which is pre-installed in Windows 11. So if you are using Windows 10, you might have to install it from the Microsoft Store. Okay, I have deviated from the topic. Now let's back to the topic. Now here is our -p, which means port 5432. It is the port of our host machine, which is our local machine, and this one is the port of Docker container. -v, which is volume. Here it is the location var/lib/postgres/data. So in this location our database will be persisted. Even if you have deleted the container, our database and data is going to persist if you have defined the volume. Now the last thing is D. -d means detached, and the last thing here, we have defined the name of our image and tag. Here you can see the name of image is Postgres and name of tag is 16.9 bullseye. So we have used both of these things. Now press enter and boom, our container is created. So if I type here docker psa, here you can see our container is created. Here it is, name is pgdev, and it is the port where it is running, and here up 9 seconds. You can also verify it here. Here I'm going to use the pgadmin4. Okay, so here I'm going to create a register, a server. So let's name it PostgreSQL dev. Now go to this tab connection, and here the host name, which is localhost, port is 5432, maintenance database Postgres, username Postgres. Okay, now here is password. So there might be a case you have forget the password, but don't worry. If we go here in the inspect section, in the environment section, you can see we have our environment variables. This one, Postgres password, and here is our password. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it here. Now let's save the password, and you can see here is our database connected. So we are done with the database end. Now let's close the docker desktop. It is just closed, but it is running in the background. Let's clear this thing out. Now we need to connect our application to the database, which is Postgres. We need some kind of driver or some kind of mechanism to connect with database. With Postgres or any database, we have multiple ways to connect with database. First one is adu.net kind of thing. With the adu.net, we can connect to our database. In the Postgres, we have npg-SQL for that. Second thing, we can connect with Dapper. It is basically a micro ORM where you can connect to your database using just raw SQLs. And the last thing is we can connect to database with ORM, object relation mapper. With the ORM, we are not directly writing SQL queries. Instead, we have given some methods which are translated to the SQL queries. So you are not directly writing the SQL queries. Instead of that, you are calling those methods in an object-oriented way, and you are getting your things done. But don't think that I do not need to learn SQL. Don't rely too much on the ORM. You also need to learn your database well. Otherwise, you are not going to find those performance issues which is entity framework or ORM is creating. So we are going to use the last option, which is called ORM. And in the .NET, we have a ORM called entity framework, which is provided by .NET, and each database have a different provider for entity framework. For the Postgres, we have npg-SQL or .entityframeworkcore .postgres.sql, something like that. So if we type here npg-SQL entity framework, type here nuget. Nuget is a store where you will find all the libraries, and PostgreSQL Entity Framework Core is a library created by PostgreSQL. So we are going to get this library from nuget. So here it is the name of our package, npgsql entity framework core.postgresSQL. Either you can copy this command or run here, or you can run it from here too. So just right click on the project and here you will see the add nuget package, and if we type here npgsql, just press enter, it is going to search it from the nuget store. And here we have these lots of options. You have to select this one, npgsql.entityframeworkcore.postgresSQL, and if you press enter, it is going to install inside this project. So it is one way, and another way is here. You can just copy this line or copy whole line, and here, where is your csfrog file located? Here. So here we have our csfrog file located. So we are going to execute that command here to verify if this package is installed or not. Double click here and it will open the csfrog file, and you can see we have this package included, npgsql entity framework core.postgresSQL. And we also need one more package which is basically .NET add package Microsoft.entityframeworkcore.design. So this package is needed to work with entity framework tool. Press enter, and that's it. It is kind of slow. I don't know why it is not. Yeah, it is opened. You can also search that package here, Microsoft.entityframeworkcore.design, and here it is the exact match. And here we can just copy this line. So do not copy the whole line, because here you can see it has shown version 10.000 preview, which is preview version. So just copy this line like we have done here and just press enter, and it is going to install. So we already have installed it. You can find it here, this one. Now we are done with nuget packages. Now we need to create a new folder which is called models, and here we are going to define our models, but we are also going to define our database context class here. So just go here and click on this thing called new file, and here we have multiple options. So just select the class and name it AppDbContext. Just delete this line. Okay, now we need to inherit a class named DbContext, which is defined here, Microsoft.entityframeworkcore. So DbContext class is responsible for creating connection, opening connection, and a closing connection, then interacting with databases. Whatever you need to do with the database, you have to do it through the DbContext. So it is kind of a bridge or something. So you need it for database related stuffs. If we go here, press F12, we can go to its definition, or we can just right click here, go to definition, F12, and if I just find this term DbContext, DbContext and this parenthesis, then we can find the constructors. This constructor is taking DbContext options. So basically we need to call this constructor from here. First we need to create our constructor. Just type ctor, then you will see this option and press enter. It will create a constructor for us. Just delete this guy, and we need to call the base constructor. Okay, and inside the base constructor, we need to pass those DbContext options which we have copied earlier. So here DbContext options, DbContext, but we need to pass a subtype here. So AppDbContext is our subtype. It is our base type and it is our subtype. Let's name it options. Okay, and just pass these options to its base class. That's it. We also need to create a class in the database. For that, we need a model, which is a C# class which corresponds to our database class. So here inside the model folder, click on new file, class, and name it person. Okay, so our first property is just type prop and press enter. It will create a new property. Press tab and here just name it id. Next thing is string first name, and you will see here it is giving this thing. It means we just have to type here string dot empty. It is giving null related error. It is saying that you cannot leave this thing like this. Either define it, either put some value into it or define it null. So that's next property is last name. Now I want to make sure that this property is not null. So I'm going to type here required. It means this property will be needed or will not be empty. Okay, now next thing is max length. So I don't want to enter n number of characters here. I just want to allow 30 characters and 30 characters here too. So we are validating these things in the database level. So when it creates a table, it will create this field which will not be empty and which will take up to 30 characters. Same goes here. Okay, so now here we have to define a DbSet and person and here people. So it is a standard practice to define a pluralized name. So what DbSet is, it is corresponds to our table in the database. So let's say DbContext is a container where we have multiple objects like DbSets. So one container have multiple DbSets and one DbSet is corresponds to the database table. So if you do not define this DbSet, you are not going to create a table in the database. With this line, it will create a table named people in the database. So if you type here person, then it will create a table with name person, but we are going to type people, which is a standard practice for creating tables. Now we have created our DbContext class. Then we have to register it in our program.cs file. So press Ctrl P, type here program.cs, and we are going here in the program.cs. So I'm going to delete this thing. I don't need it. I'm making it little bit cleaner. Okay, and I also do not need this, not this. Okay, so now that is clean. Now here we have to register our DbContext class. So builder dot services dot add DbContext, name of our context class subtype. So subtype is AppDbContext, which we have created earlier. Now here just type options dot use npgsql and here we will define our connection string. So how do we get this connection string? We will just define here string connection string, and let's replace it with this. Now how we get the connection string? So you do not need to worry about remembering anything. Just type here npg SQL connection string, and you have these options. So this one is connection string. Let's see what it offers. It's saying that this is our connection string, but I doubt it works or not, so I'm not going to go here. I'm going to go to the official site, which is npgsql.org or org, and here we have this basic connection parameter description. So we have these properties. So let's define these properties. Host, okay, next one is port, that is okay. So next one is database, next one is username, another one is password. So our host is localhost, port is 5432, database is we can name it anything, so let's name it PeopleDB. Username is Postgres, and password is P55W0RD. So that is our connection string. Okay, so it is one way to define connection string, but it is not a good way to define it here, because what if you want to change this connection string in the future when you have deployed this project? Then you need to rebuild this project again and redeploy it. A better place to define connection string is app settings. So here go to the app settings.json and just type here connection strings, name it default, it is a key value pair, and paste this connection string here. Now how do I get this connection string? Here, how can I access this connection string? That's not a big of a deal. Just type here builder.configuration.get connection string and the key of the connection string, which is default. And now if this connection string is null, then throw an exception, throw invalid operation exception, just pass a message. Oops, here should be throw new invalid operation exceptions. Connection string with name default does not exist. Okay, so here we have get our connection strings, then we have defined it here. So we are basically registering our AppDbContext in the di container, and AppDbContext is registered as a scoped service. It is registered as a scoped lifetime. So if you don't know about dependency injection, just go and check out about dependency injection and what it is. So we are basically doing all of this so that we can inject AppDbContext anywhere in our application. Now we have registered it in the di container. So di container is a kind of container which holds the instances of the services or classes. So this container or this di container will hold the instance of AppDbContext. So wherever we need the instance of AppDbContext, we will just ask to di container, hey, give me the instance of AppDbContext. So let's say you need it in the person controller. And one way is that you manually create the instance of AppDbContext, but it increases the dependencies. So we outsource the responsibility of creating the instance to the di container. So di container will contain a lot of services like our service AppDbContext. So wherever we need this service, we just ask to di container, hey, give me the instance, and it will give us an instance. Then we can use it. That is dependency injection. It's just a sorter for detail. I would recommend you to go to the Google, just search it. You probably get a better article in the learn.microsoft.com. Okay, now our dependency injection part is done. Let's create a database. But how do we create a database? So for that, we have a thing called migrations. We can use the migrations. To work with migration, first thing you need to do here, so just search .NET EF tools, and here you can see this site learn.microsoft.com, and just go here and you can see this section. You can download it from this command .NET tool install -- global. It means we are installing is globally, which is a recommended way. You must install it globally .NET EF. And if you already have installed it, then you can update it with this command, which I am going to do. So I'm just going to update it. So it is saying that tool.NET EF is already installed. Oh, okay. Now we have installed our .NET EF tools. And next thing which we already have done, if we check our CS proj file, we need this package to work with EF core tools. So we already have installed this package. Okay. Now let's not open it. Let's go here. It is more visible, so I'm going to use this external terminal. You can also use the internal terminal. Make sure you are in the right directory, like this .NET pgdemo.api. So you must be here. Okay, you can use it, but I'm going to use the external terminal. You just have to type .NET EF migrations, name of the migration, which can be anything, but I am going to name it initial create. So this command is wrong. .NET EF migrations add initial create. I'm sure it is correct. When we write this command and execute this command, it creates a new folder here named migrations, and you can see this thing here. We have the timestamp. So if we click on this thing, you will see this file, and here in this file we have this section up, which will be executed when we update the database, which we are going to do next. So when we write the update database command, this method is going to be executed. So what is going on here? First, our migration builder is creating a table named people, which we have defined here. So our database, table name is people. Now we have columns. First one is ID, which is integer, and it is a identity column. Next thing is first name, which is character varying 30, which is equivalent to varchar 30, and its max length is 30. Next thing is last name, which is also character varying 30 or varchar 30, max length 30. And it also have constraints primary key pk people on x.id, and this one is down. So if we type .NET EF migrations remove, then it is going to execute this method. Okay, now how to create a database? It is still the problem. We have created migrations. Now we need to run those migrations. To run those migrations, we have command .NET EF database update, and it is going to execute the last migration file. Okay, so it has given us this error. I don't know why, but at the end it has created this table. So you can see here it has created table, create table if not exists. First it has created this EF migration history with migration ID and product version, and this table holds the history of migration. So it holds information how many migration file we have applied to database. In this way it can track how many migration files are executed. Now here let's say it has created one more table, ID integer generated by default as identity, first name this, last name this, constraint primary key, that's it. At last it has inserted into EF migration history, migration ID and product version. So this is migration ID initial create, which we have created. So it is the name of this file, and here is the version of our, let's say what it is. So yeah, it is the version of our entity framework core 9.0.6. Go here in the Postgres database, let's refresh it, and you can see we have PeopleDB in the schemas, in the public. You can see we have this table migration history, and if we go here, where is it, this one, you can see we have this row, it is our migration ID, and this one is product version, entity framework version, and we also have this table. So let's see scripts, and so it is our table ID, first name, last name. So we have successfully connected to the database. Now next thing we need to do is to create a controller. So here we are going to create a new controller. So go to this folder controller and click on this icon, this one, new file, then click on API controller and name this controller PeopleController. Now it is our controller and our root is like this. Okay, so now our root will be like if our application is listening at this port localhost 500, then our route will be /API/name of controller, which is people. It is the name of our controller which is defined here. So our base path is going to be this one, but you can also define it like this, people or person, but it is a recommended practice to name our endpoint like this, people, in the pluralized form, because people is a collection. So that is why we have defined it like people. You can also use this approach, controller, because our name of controller is also in the plural form, people. Make sure to name it in a plural form because it is a collection where we are going to add or update or delete the item. Okay, now what we are going to do, first thing we are going to create a constructor. Okay, so let's remove this guy. Now we need a private field here, private read only. Read only means it can only be changed from the constructor. Read only underscore, which is a naming convention for the private field. Sorry, but before that, let's type here AppDbContext underscore context. Underscore means it is our private field. It is not mandatory to name it like underscore context, but it is good practice to name it context, sorry, underscore context. Underscore says that it is a private field. Now if I press control dot, you will see we have this option, add parameters to PeopleController. If I click on this, so it will inject this AppDbContext through the constructor injection. So we have injected this thing here. So rather than manually creating its instance, we are injecting it here. How we are getting its instance? So like I have demonstrated before, we are getting its instance from here. Not exactly from here, but we have registered it here. It has registered it in the di container, and here we are just injecting it in the people's controller through the constructor injection. So we are just asking to the di container, hey, give me the instance of AppDbContext. So that is how we are getting instance. Now let's create a method here, a post method, http post public async task action result, create person. That's it. And let's type here try and go to this section and press enter. So we have defined our try catch block. In the catch block, let's type exception ex. Okay, and here just return status codes, which is an enum, and here we have the internal server error, and we will also return the exception message. So when we get error, we will return this status code to the client and along with this message. Now let's work in this try block. So first thing, type here await context dot people. So this people is the DbSet we have defined earlier. So context is a kind of container which have this DbSet people, and with DbSet we can perform various operations on our database. Like I want to add something in the database, so just type here add, and it is asking the instance of the persons which we have here. Just paste it here. Sorry, not await, just simple context dot people dot add. Now we will write here await context dot save changes async. Since save changes async is an async method, then we need to type here await. Since we are using await, we also have to define the async. I'm assuming that you already have good knowledge of C# fundamental and you are aware of async await. At the end, we will return OK, which will just return 200 status code, and we also need to return a newly created item. So we are just going to return this person. So let's run our application. Okay, but before, let's go here, not here, let's go here, and here let's create person.http, and from here just copy this line and let's go back here and just type here base address API / people. Just type here post base address content type application / JSON, which means we are passing the JSON data to the server. Our server is expecting us to pass the JSON data. Now we will define the JSON data here. So just type here first name, and first name is John, last name is Doe. We do not need to define ID here because even if you do not pass the ID, it will automatically generate the ID in the database. So we just need to pass these two fields. So now let's run our application. Let's type here .NET run. Now if I click on this send request, it's saying bad request. One or more validation field. The first name is required. Okay, so here is a typo, which is first name. Okay, so it has created a new record for us. It is returning status code 200 okay, which we have defined here. Okay, it is also returning as an object which we have passed here. So how this ID is coming? Since we are just returning the object which client has sent us, so client has sent us this object which does not contain the ID. We are returning that object to the client, but it has now the ID field. So this ID field is automatically filled by the entity framework. When it creates a database it creates a record in the database, so it also updates it here. We can verify it here. We have the data. Let's check it out. You can see we have this ID. So let's add one or two more record. Let's add me. Okay, let's add it ABC and XYZ. You can see we have 3 records. Okay, now you might be thinking that, hey, it's a magic, how it is happening. So when we have called this method context.people.add, then it has added this object to our context. When we have executed this line, then it has translated this to a SQL query, which you can check here. So it has translated it to insert into people, first name, last name, and values is this. So you cannot get these values, it's just some placeholder for those values, and it is also returning us the ID. That is why we were getting the ID. So as you can see, we have entered 3 record. You can see one insert statement, second insert statement, and third insert statement. So at the end, these things are getting converted to the SQL statements. Then those SQL statements are executed by the database. So it is not a magic. It's just object relational mapper. We are mapping our SQL queries to the objects. So we are just basically calling this add method, and it is adding our record to the database. Now let's see how we can get these records. So let's copy this thing and paste it here. Just type here http get. It is our get method. Get people. It won't have any parameters, and catch block will be fine, and we do not need any of this. So first we are going to retrieve all the records from the database. So just type here people equals to await context dot people dot to list async. So it will fetch all the records from the table people, and it will also fetch all the columns. So it is going to execute the select asterisk from people this query. Okay, return okay, which means 200 status code, 200 status code, and we are also passing this list to this status code along with this status code. Now let's run this thing. Meanwhile, let's open our person.http class. What it was? Oh, it's a typo. Person.http. It's okay. So let's go here, type 3 hash. It means we can create a new request after 3 hashes. So it is mandatory to put 3 hashes here, otherwise you won't be able to make another request. It will be a get request base URL, which is this one. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, we are fine. Let's click on this guy, and you can see we have our 3 records. Here we have status code 200. Okay, that's good. And you can see it has retrieved all the rows. Select p.id, p.firstname, p.lastname from people as p. So it is translated to this SQL. Let's stop this guy and let's go here and let's see how we can find a single person. So let's name it get person by id, int id, and we also need to define a id here. Okay, and here instead of people we just have to find person context dot people. Since we have id which is primary key, so we can use directly a find async, and instead of people let's return the person. But we also need to check if person is null or not, since if we hover here it's saying it is nullable. So it can also be null. What if someone has passed the wrong id? So let's also handle that case. So we'll check here if person equals to null. Okay, or you can replace equals to with is null. Both are fine. It is a newer syntax and it is the older syntax. Okay, now here if person is null, return not found, and in the not found let's just type person with id does not found. Okay, so let's run our application again. Let's copy this thing, and here we need to pass 1. Let's see what happens. You can see 1 John Doe. Let's see 2, it's me with a typo, that's okay. The third one is this one, so let's type here 4. When we type here 4, we have this status code 404 not found. This condition is handled here. If person is null, then return not found along with this message, and this message here is in the body. Person with id 4 does not found. So I guess, not guess, I'm sure, just remove this dollar. We do not need this dollar. So that's how we can get our single record. So let's see what is happening here. It has called this SQL statement. Select p.id, p.firstname, p.lastname from people as p, where p.id equals to this. And limit 1 means we are just asking for 1 records. Now, when we have created a person, we are just returning okay, but it is not that much descriptive. So we must return the 201 status code, which is 201 created status code. So it indicates that we have created a new resource. So let's define here created at route. We are also define a route where you can find this resource. So created at route, name of route, okay, and an object which that route need, and the data which are going to passed in the body, which is this person. So now what is this route? So we are basically going to give the route of this endpoint, but we also need to define the name of that route which we haven't defined yet. So just type here get person, you can just name it get person, or you can be more explicit like get person by ID. So make sure to copy this name and paste it here. Now this endpoint also need this ID. So how we are going to pass this ID? So we are going to pass this ID from here, ID equals to person.id. Okay, so let's execute it again. Let's run it again, and let's go here and let's name it name 4 last name 4. His name is first name 4. Okay, our application is running, so let's execute it, and you can see the status code 201 created. Okay, and the location, so it is the location of that resource. So if we go here and let's go here, we can go to that location. So this one is created on this route, sorry, in this request, and we are also getting the body which we have passed here. The third parameter is the body, second one is the object for the route, and this is the route. So it basically these two parameter make this thing, and the last parameter makes this thing. Okay, so we are done with this thing. Now we also need to update our resource, so I'm going to copy this create person endpoint and going to paste it here. Instead of create person, let's just name it update person, and it will also take something from parameter. Let's name it int id, and this thing will be passed from the body, So id will be passed as with a URL or through the parameters, and these things will be passed from the body. It will be http put, and here we also need to define id. So make sure this thing and this thing should be same. Now instead of add, we need to define update, and here is this one, and let's remove this and just return no content. With update we do not need to return any content. It will just return 204, I guess it's empty or something like that. But we also need to take care of few conditions, like if someone have passed 3 in the parameter and 4 in the body, so we need to take care of that situation. So if id, which is passed as a parameter, does not equals to id from the body person.id, then now it's fine. Then we need to return a bad request. Just type here id in the parameter, and or just an id in the query and in the body does not match. That's it. And we also need to take care of one more condition. So let's just type here, first we need to find that whether the person exists or not. What if someone wants to update a person which does not exist in the database? Suppose someone has passed id 200 and maybe 200 ID is not present in our database. So we need to make sure that this ID exists or not. If it does not exist, then we need to return 400 not found status code. So first let's verify if person exists or not. So let's check person exists equals to context dot people dot any p dot id equals to id. If person does not exist, so I'm going to put an explanation mark here. Person exists. So if person does not exist, return not found. Person with ID does not exist. So let's run this guy, and okay, now go here and just copy this guy and paste it here. After 3 hashes, just type here put, and okay, oops, put. Okay, now we are good. And as we have mentioned, we need to pass an ID from the query parameter. So I'm just going to pass the let's say this one, first name, forename. So its ID is 4, so I'm going to pass 4. And let's make sure it's a 4. Yeah, it's 4, first name, last name. We also need to pass ID here, so ID, and let's make it 5 and change it to F name and L name 4. Okay, so let's see. 400 bad request is saying ID in the query and in the body does not match, which is not matching. So let's match them, 5 and 5. Let's make a HTTP request, and you can see 404 not found. Person with ID 5 does not exist, which is really does not exist. So we don't have any record with ID 5. Now let's make it 4 and make it 4. Let's see, and you can see 204 not content. Okay, so let's see. Okay, here F name 4, L name 4, and if we go here, you can see the fourth one, F name 4, L name 4. Okay, now we need a last endpoint, which is a delete endpoint. So for delete endpoint, I'm going to copy the put endpoint. So instead of put, I am going to type here http delete, and here delete person, and this thing is not needed. We just need an ID from query, and this condition is also not needed. Yeah, this condition is needed, so that's good. So first we need to find if person, which is going to be deleted, is exist or not. If it does not exist, we will return not found, and instead of update, we will remove it. So since we need a whole object to remove from people, we need a whole object of person, which we do not have, so we need to create it. So instead of this, we need to create an object here, person context dot people dot find. Okay, and find it with id, and instead of find, let's type here find async, and let's type here await. So we just need to change a condition here. If person is not null, then if person is null, If person is null, it means it does not exist. So if it is not null, then remove it and then save changes, and at the end return no content. So let's rerun our application. So just copy this line and put 3 hashes here and right here delete. Okay, so first let's type here 5. Let's see what is happening. We're saying 404 not found, id with 5 not found, and you can see it has executed this query. Select this from people where id is this, and limit 1 means just take one record. Now let's type here 4, which exists. Now if I click on this, you will see 204 no content, which means it is not exist in the database anymore. So let's see. Okay, here 404 not found, so it is not available in the database. We can also verify it from here. So our 4th record is gone. So finally we have completed our application with .NET using PostgreSQL. So that's it for now. See you next time.